good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cannabis Minority Report. We are here today, Monday. What is today? April 17th already. So this is the week of 420. Hope everybody's going to have an amazing week this week. I know that it's been a challenge in the industry lately, but I think this is a good time to remember to tap in and celebrate what we are here for. Remember the plant, remember ourselves, remember each other, remember the community that we bring together. And hopefully, I'm a big believer that there's always something to celebrate, even when things are really rough. Sometimes I think that's even why it's more reason to celebrate. Sometimes when things are challenging, we have to recognize that we have to celebrate the small things, which do lead to the big things to eventually celebrate. So just a couple words there to start the week. 420 it is, and hope everyone has a good one. So that said, we got a great episode today. We have an awesome co-host for the second time now co-hosting with us. Kay Villamin, the state regs chair here at NCIA and co-founder of Hush Chicago, amazing company that I've had the pleasure of going to some 420 events for, actually. So Kay, thanks for joining us as our co-host today. And we have a couple of amazing guests lined up today. It's going to be a great conversation. Dr. Bridget Williams and Natacha Andrews, Esquire. So just great conversation here today. We're going to talk about a little bit about this book, that The Courage in Cannabis, which is, tells a lot of great stories about really kind of the human side of the plant and the journey and the advocacy and everything else that it takes to really stand this industry up. And we're also going to talk to Dr. Bridget and Natacha about the work that they do in their advocacy world as well as in their business world as well. Natacha is the director of the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers, and Dr. Bridget Williams has a lot of hats that she wears, including serving on our education committee. So we'll get to that interview in just a minute. We're going to start, as always, with some announcements from NCIA, and then we'll switch into the news that Kay will be reading. So NCIA announcements. I'm actually really excited today because we get to finally officially announce all 4 stops, and now 4 stops. We were trying to go for 3, but we're going to have 4 stops on the Equity Workshop Tour. So the Equity Workshop Tour will take place in Chicago on May 6th, Detroit on May 7th, New York, we're actually going to stop in New Jersey first. We're still solidifying whether it's going to be Jersey City or Elizabeth. That'll be on May 11th. And then on Saturday, May 13th, we'll wrap things up in New York, in Brooklyn, before we then head to Lobby Days, May 16th to May 18th, where we hope to see some of you. So going to be an awesome May coming up. I'm really excited that we get to announce this. Registration for those interested in registering and joining us. Registration will be open in the next few days. We'll be going ahead and posting that link. If you want to get a jump on that, shoot me a DM and we'll get you rolled up and everything. So, just to note, it is complimentary. It's free for all of our Equity Scholarship Program members, as well as invitees of our partnered organizations. We have some amazing partnered organizations such as MCBA, M4M, CEIC, and several others we'll be announcing over the next few days. And we also, I should definitely make sure we thank our sponsors here. So let me make sure I get that list right. So gold sponsors for New York, thank you so much, Grow America Builders and Etain, for stepping up to the plate there. We also have a lot of great silver sponsors that have joined us: Indiva Advisors, Canis Capital, the Mary Jane Consulting Group, Zenco, Jeffrey Hoffman and Associates, Illinois Equity Staffing, and then actually Grow America Builders double down again. So we have some great sponsors, some other folks that are joining in soon. It's going to be a really an awesome event, event series, and looking forward to bringing that to all these different cities. All right, the next thing I want to make sure to I mention today is that our Catalyst conversation for the spring is going to be on May 3rd. That's our webinar series. This one is going to be called "It Takes an Educational Ecosystem to Empower a Community." We have people representing City College of San Francisco, the San Francisco Office of Cannabis, Cleveland School of Cannabis, NCIA's Education Committee, and Green Enterprises HBCU College to Careers Initiative. The purpose of this is to really show that it does take an ecosystem to create an empowering dynamic for the community. And so we're going to talk with these leaders about how they've plugged in together, how they're looking to plug in together, and how we can really elevate the education in this industry, which is so key. It's what everybody always talks about needing more of. These folks are out there leading the charge and doing it. So more to come on that later. And then another couple things to note here is our DEI delegation. I believe I announced that we officially will have our DEI delegation in DC. We have, I believe, 5 delegates that will be joining us from across the country. And we'll talk more on that next week. But just want to get the NCIA updates. And now we're going to switch over to Kay, bringing us some news. And as always here, our news stories are, I'll let Kay explain it. So Kay, go ahead and take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, depending on where you are. We'll start off with some national news. Some of you may have seen that the MJ Biz fact book just came out. And, what that is a 200-page fact book that really provides, businesses and leaders and, anyone in the industry with a lot of data and in-depth analysis for making informed decisions. So a lot of it is research reports, financial forecasts. And so in just the first few pages of that cannabis fact book, that 200 plus pages, is talking about how the industry in the US impacts the economy. So as even just a headline, it's the cannabis industry will add $100 billion to the US economy this year alone. So in that forecast, they're saying for every $10 that consumers and patients spend at retail locations, an additional $18 will be injected into the economy, and much of it that's going to be in the local level. So, the total impact of generated by cannabis sales, expecting to top $100 billion. That's up more than 12% from last year. And looking ahead, just with their projections, it's an upward of $160 billion in additional spending that's going to be added to the US economy in 2027. And that's thanks to expansion and additional new recreational and medical markets, such as New York, Maryland, Missouri, and Kentucky, the very most recent. And so how they do this is, they analyze similar industries, they consult with economists, and then they add a standard multiplier of 2.8 on projected rec and medical sales. And so the projections are estimated given the nature of the rapidly expanding industry. Despite we're seeing prices go down, and a lot of news on supply being up and not enough people consuming. This projection is still saying that it's going to be governed by really a patchwork of state laws. Some that remain illegal under federal law. And this also encompasses a range of, agricultural, manufacturing, retail operators, and even non-plant touching ancillary companies. It even includes markets such as cannabis events, hospitality businesses that tend to have an even higher impact in other industries. So, they're saying the total amount of US adult use and medical cannabis sales is expected to reach 30 billion in 2023, up from a revised 30 billion in 2022. So, things to look out for really, according to the fact book, are things like unionization. Union organizers view the cannabis industry as, really ripe right now, considering it was one of the largest industries with really robust growth opportunities. And so not all companies are friendly to union efforts, but we should expect to hear more about fights between workers and businesses. Look out for illicit markets. New York, all eyes are New York, and New York is going to prove again that, to lure consumers away from illicit operators, regulators really need to make business conditions friendly and keep taxes low. There's going to be a rise in Delta 8, THC, and other, what they call boutique or minor cannabinoids. Hemp derivatives have become a significant source of competition for the industry. And without really any changes to the law, the most unregulated market for Delta 8 is likely to be a headache, as they say, for the cannabis businesses. And then changes in consumer taste, where they say flower sales will continue to grow in virtually every market, but flower continues to also lose market share to other products, such as vapes, concentrates, and edibles, as more and more new consumers enter the market. So that's for the national headline. Any thoughts?
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could probably talk for about 2 hours just on that one topic alone. Yeah. But I the things that really step out for me are, imagine what those numbers would look like if we had federal legalization. And also, this is the Cannabis Minority Report, and we have to point out again that there's still a lot of people in jail. There's still a lot of people getting arrested. There's still a lot of people that are serving time and basically, providing the penal system free labor while, for this plant, while at the same time we have hundreds of billions of dollars now, it looks like, being generated. That's annually, right? So every year we're looking at $100 billion that the economy is driven by. So, I think it's something that we have to always be conscious of in this industry is never, Tiffany Watkins was on here a few weeks ago and she said, we have to never forget what it's taking to build this industry. And, we have to always be advocates in this industry. A lot of us never thought that we would necessarily be advocates for cannabis, or we never thought that we'd be cannabis advocates, but we realize as we're setting up in this industry that it's one and the same. You have to do both. And I get it. There's a lot of people that don't. But I believe very strongly that we have to, and I know everybody here does too. So, I think that that's the thing that really sticks out to me the most in that is that wow, $100 billion, we're still not allowed to take 280E deductions, and people are still going to jail. So okay, right. At some point in time, where's the critical mass where they actually legitimize this? They deschedule and they say that we're actually legitimate. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that this actually, like what you just said last, would be a good segue into the next headline. And one of the other news that I'm reporting on today is, and I don't know if you or anyone on this call knows about this, but Boston actually has one of the best cannabis museums in the U.S. And it's considered a social justice cannabis museum. So it's not your typical kind of just fun type, just view art type of museum. It's really focused on social justice. And so I'll read this quote. It's called the Core, which is also a great name for it. So this is in Boston. I'll read this quote from the website, so I want to make sure I do it justice. So the Core Social Justice Cannabis Museum in Boston invites guests to engage with the insanity and inequity of American drug policy through a series of changing exhibits. For over a century, cannabis has been used as a weapon to divide people and cultures. Core aims to resist division by promoting cannabis as the inherent unifier that it is. We believe that a new generation that is unified rather than divided can reasonably consider the human relationship with substances to create coherent drug policy in America. If you're looking for things to do in Boston, this Boston Art Museum is the best for you museum in the city. So, I was looking at the website. This looks really cool. It's super educational, informative, but also very immersive. It has exhibits that changes, but it has an exhibit like the American Warden, the terpene wall, where you can try different terpenes. There's a wall where there's actually pumps and you can, spray different terpenes from the wall. It has a setup, an homage to illicit home growing. So you actually see this tiny home grow in a closet of, like what it would look like as a home grow. And then there's an immersive jail cell, so you can sit in a cell and experience what that would be like being incarcerated. There's also a screen where you could watch actual police footage of raids that have happened in dispensaries and stores around the country. And one cool thing that they have is called a confessional room, kind of like a confession room, where you sit and you can record a video and you can share your own story and how cannabis has helped you. So I thought it was a free, a fun addition to add to the news. And something that I didn't know about, and just an exhibit that's really different. That's going to educate people. It's not just
Oh, we lost Kay. Did we lose the sound?
Oh, how about now?
Yep, we got you back.
Okay. I don't know what you last heard, but it's just something more immersive and fun, and really educates people on the inequities of the country and the industry.
Awesome. No, thanks, Kay. I wasn't aware of this either, so that's really great to know. We'll have to reach out to them and see, learn more and find out more about what they're doing out there. Shout out to real quick out to Devin Alexander out there in that area, doing a lot of great work. And I think Rolling Relief is now rolling. So that's great to see, social equity licensee out in Massachusetts. Hopefully there will be more and more of those kinds of stories coming out of Massachusetts. So Awesome. Well, we're going to now switch gears into talking with our awesome guest here today, Dr. Bridget. I was going to say Dr. Natasha, but it's Dr. Bridget and it's Natasha Andrews, Esquire. Great to have you both on here. Thank you so much for joining. I know that we it took a minute to try to figure out how to make sure that this could happen because we want to make sure that we had a platform here to discuss the book that you all produced, which I think is really amazing. I know that last year, Khadijah Adams was able to highlight some of the stories and what you guys are doing here. And just a case point here, this is again, another nod to what is really going on in the industry, what has really happened to form it. It's not just all kind of this, whitewashed version that we kind of see sometimes when we're getting up on stages and everybody's talking about, ROI and EBITDA and all this kind of stuff. So appreciate you joining here today. I think the first question I really want to ask, so you can share with our audience here, is just what brought you into the industry? So whoever would like to go first, what brought you into the industry in the first place?
Go ahead, Natasha.
Okay. Well, for myself, I come from an immigration law background. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for the past 25 years. And I most recently worked as an immigration lawyer. Cannabis was sort of an unusual deviation for me. You talked earlier, Mike, about people not seeing this in their future, and I certainly did not see this on my path. But as an immigration attorney, I had the unpleasant fortune, if you will, of seeing families whose separation or inability to achieve immigrant status was due to nonviolent cannabis-related convictions, which ultimately led to deportation and, in some instances, a banishment from being able to enter the country. At the time that I was seeing this, I really wasn't connecting any dots. I didn't see the bigger picture. I belonged to the population that did not view cannabis issues as my issues. I kind of saw them as other issues. But it did not take long. And I'll tell you, it took me a trip to Seattle, Washington, where I, for the first time, was in a market that was open. And it completely changed my entire world. Not only was I exposed to things that I did not see in my day to day and wasn't a part of my culture, my background, my upbringing, I saw immediately the stark contrast between walking around Seattle, where there is this possibility, this hope, this open market, this freedom, this lack of inhibition, and this ability to create wealth. It was a very different conversation than the conversation I was seeing where I lived. And for me, that startling difference is what made me start looking at cannabis and ultimately looking at it as not only a justice issue, but a civil rights issue. And that's how I got here.
Awesome. And before we switch over here to Dr. Bridget, just to follow up on that, that's what led, it sounds like, to the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers being created then. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing with that organization?
Absolutely. The NABCL was ultimately founded. We all know that there is a lack of diversity still, unfortunately, within the cannabis industry. And there are a lot of people working very hard to change that narrative. But at its core, that narrative is not going to move if the decision makers continue to be made up of pools of people who are not reflective of our American population, who are not diverse. They can't bring to the table the thought processes of the people who are being excluded. Only the people who are being excluded can bring their own perspective to that table and do it actual justice. And so when I first came to cannabis, it was a huge learning curve for me, both from learning the culture and the plant to learning the law, because the law was literally being created as I was learning it, which is the case for everyone right now. And so I sought out other Black attorneys to start having those conversations about, what do we do to make sure that certain issues are not left out of decision making? And I had a lot of difficulty finding a cohesive group of Black attorneys. I found individuals, but not under any sort of umbrella organization that sought out equity as its main objective. And so my motto is, if you can't find it, then don't be afraid to create it. And so National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers was born from that drive.
Great. Thank you so much, Natasha. Dr. Bridget, can you give us a little bit more of your background?
Sure. So I'm a family physician by trade. I spent most of my career at the Cleveland Clinic, doing family medicine, occupational medicine, originally from Detroit. So hopefully, Mike, we can meet up going that direction. But I ended up in the cannabis space really because I became way too frustrated way too early in my career. And from having all of this education and then working in my clinic, and literally it's diagnosis pill all day long, and seeing how unhappy my patients were with that model and feeling like I knew so much more and could help people in a much more significant way if we slowed things down, if we had more conversation and really sought out what patients were concerned about. And so I actually started creating a group of patients that I was helping them get off of medications. One of those patients was a breast cancer survivor, new diabetic, and started asking me about cannabis. At the time, I think probably like Natasha and a lot of people, I was thinking, what's the point of this conversation? And, there's nothing there to be seen. So I actually started pulling together information to explain to her why she was incorrect in her thinking, found all this research, particularly from other countries and what have you, that I was blown away by. And really having a lot of faith in her journey and her experiences, I followed and actually supported her with using cannabis to help with her diabetes, her stress, her sleep, and saw her really transform in a way that I knew the pharmaceuticals were not doing. And so fast forward, because that wasn't quite all above board, right, at that time, but fast forward to Ohio actually developing their program, I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to really guide and educate patients again in this space and helping them find an alternative to the pharmaceutical model. I was basically shot down when I got a job with a card company saying, we don't do that. We're cards for cash and in and out. So I just developed my own company, which was Green Harvest Health. And also now I've branched out into creating Dr. Bridget MD.
And could you just provide? You said a card company, cards for cash. I think that's an important point. Not everybody might be familiar with here. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So unfortunately, a lot, if not most, of the card companies that provide medical cannabis cards for patients are business owned, not necessarily physician driven. And the model is really set up to see patients as quickly as possible, provide cards as quickly as they can, and not necessarily providing treatment plans, follow up, or any sort of guidance. Partly it's because a lot of the physicians that sometimes participate don't necessarily have the cannabis education and background to support the patients, nor is it necessarily required. Most of the certification programs for doctors across the country are pretty limited in what they require. I saw that myself and went and got certified as a cannabis educator with the Natural Wellness Academy. When I saw how, after I finished my certification, I was like, that's it. I was looking for something more. And so cards for cash is kind of a term, or the card mill, other people call it, is most of the companies that you see that really don't provide patient care. They simply provide the card.
Got it. So, I see as that's part of the challenge of even integrating the medical industry with, the cannabis and CBD industry. So do you have any sort of updates or insights on like what the current state of affairs is right now of the medical industry, and like what does it look like with its current intersection with cannabis and CBD?
Sure. So as I'm looking, and I've spent the last couple of years going to the conferences and getting a larger view of what cannabis and CBD looks like across the country, what I'm really seeing, definitely hitting a bigger mark this year, is more technology. right? And so there's always been a certain layer of that when it comes to seed to sale and the cultivators and dispensaries, what have you, but I'm seeing more technology hitting the consumer. And so whether it's journaling, whether it's documenting experiences, creating forums for people to communicate, which is kind of come and go over time, the DNA testing is hitting a larger market right now. And so when people are looking to see what would work best for them, people are very interested in minimizing the trial and error that can occur with cannabis, particularly if you're not following up with a physician that is knowledgeable about cannabis. A lot of people get their card and then it's just try and error and you're all over the place. People are looking for this DNA testing to actually utilize that to see if we can narrow some of the error margins as far as what's beneficial for them. So I think in the coming year you're going to see more and more information and opportunities. We're currently creating an alternative to the Quick Card app and something that's much more robust called Reclaim MD to help patients as well. And so with that, I think what you'll see even with the CBD end of it is that even health systems that have been resistant, I'm getting more and more physicians that are reaching out that want to know more. And so it's a slow trickle and as far as physicians being able to provide that information, as well as being more and more curious about it and taking it seriously. But I think we'll see some changes.
Awesome. Thanks for that update. And throw a quick shout out here to Otha Smith. He's
Yes.
got a company called Tetragram. It's an
Yes.
app, and he's been a great friend and ally of our DEI program and doing a lot of work in the similar space. It sounds like you know him already.
Yes.
So just throwing a shout out to Otha. Otha is awesome. So this is a great segue back into the work that you're doing, Natasha, with the NABCL. I think what we're seeing here really is we're talking about Otha. Dr. Bridget, Natasha, you all are not, well, I know actually, Dr. Bridget, you do have a separate manufacturing endeavor, but your main focus is, and what you're coming into the space from is the ancillary space, so to speak, right? It's coming in from the professional space, right? Whether it's being lawyers, tech companies or doctors. And when I say lawyers, I don't mean lawyers that specialize in cannabis law. I mean, you specialized in immigration law, and now it's about putting together the Black lawyers coming from all different aspects of the spectrum. So I think what I really want to ask you about here, Natasha, is as Dr. Bridges is talking about this need for being able to communicate with patients and being able to get patient data. Again, this comes back to the importance of, I think, representation within the professional services part of the industry. Can you speak a little bit to kind of that and the need for the Black and brown voices, the global majority voices in the ancillary space and the professional services space?
Absolutely. That's a huge part of what I speak to people about regularly, understanding that ancillary space. I think primarily for people who are skeptics, and I love talking to skeptics because I was recently one of them myself. And so it's an easy population for me to reach and to understand. For those people, I think they still need to understand what cannabis law is, what the legality of cannabis is, and being involved in the cannabis industry doesn't, one, mean that you partake, and doesn't, two, mean that you have to abandon everything you know to do and suddenly become a farmer, right? I come across people all the time. I'm like, if you've never grown anything other than houseplants, this is not your time to shine. And if you grew 3 plants in your college dorm room, that does not mean you are prepared to be a cultivator and to open up and scale up to be able to produce to the masses. So there is a lot of re-education, right? And from a professional standpoint, I think a lot of people who hold themselves out as professionals still deal with the stigma. Now, this is an indication of whether or not they partake, because there are still a lot of closeted partakers, but it's the stigma of being a professional and being involved with this plant. And a lot of that comes from not understanding the history of cannabis, the history of prohibition in this country, and the potential for the future. More importantly, I think it's also a short-sightedness at not realizing that although you may elect not to partake, recreationally as an adult, you have that choice to partake or not to partake. We don't always have the luxury of choosing from a medical position whether this is something that will be instrumental in our lives. So I not only applaud Dr. Bridget, but I think that we need more Dr. Bridgets. That said, that ancillary space is so exciting because I generally tell people there isn't a practice out there that can't touch and concern cannabis. Cannabis itself is so versatile. We can use the euphemisms of hemp if we want to, but those of us on this side of the fence know that all of it is cannabis, right? Whether you're talking CBD or you're talking hemp, you're talking cannabis. And so understanding that that's what you're talking about, it's very easy to see, hey, if you're a photographer, you don't need to become a farmer. Continue being a photographer, because I promise you, there are about 10 pictures that circulate and we all know them because we see them everywhere. There aren't enough photographers taking pictures of cannabis out there. That's why my article and your article and the next book cover and the next label has the exact same picture. If you are doing real estate, then stay in real estate, but understand the nuances as they pertain to cannabis. Because when you have a cannabis client that comes to your door, you need to be able to point them into the green zones, into the areas where their type of business will be welcome. We need people to do packaging and labeling and marketing, and the list goes on and on. There's a similar phenomenon in the legal space. You talked about cannabis lawyers, and this may be unpopular to my fellow attorneys out there, but there's kind of no such thing as cannabis law in and of itself. It's what area of law do you specialize in, and how can you best service your cannabis clients? So if you're doing taxes, you don't have to suddenly become whatever a cannabis lawyer is. You continue to be a tax attorney who understands 280E, so you don't send your clients down a bad path. And at the end of the day, those are the takeaways that are most important about understanding ancillary space, whether it is from a profession or from just a lay perspective of whatever industry you're in.
Wow. Wow, that great answer. I mean, I think everybody needs to hear that in the professional spaces right now, especially gold majority Black and brown folks that are trying to figure out how to support this industry and how to support the end of the war on drugs. So really, thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Bridget, anything to add?
Yeah, I have to say, after, teaching for the last couple of years, I was often seeing people, and this is backing up what Natasha shared, that literally left things that they loved because they loved the plant that much more, and felt like they had to leave older, their careers behind. And so what I would often tell people is, do still what you love and just sprinkle a little cannabis on top of it, right? And then you will find a niche that is more unique, which is really what is most important, I feel, in the ancillary space, right? That you don't want, people are always looking for something a little bit different and more unique. And if you can take something about yourself or your career that you already succeed at, and then sprinkle a little bit of the cannabis on top of it, you're going to be more sought out, more interesting, more sought after than someone who, like you said, you squash a lot of dreams there, Natasha, for the 3-plant guy to become the multi-acre guy. Do what you love already, and then just add cannabis to it.
I just got to say, sprinkle a little cannabis on it. It'll make everything more interesting and better. So absolutely. I'm not going to argue with that at all. That's, I think I live my life by that philosophy. Kay, did you have something else you wanted to mention?
I love what both of you said, especially what you just said right now, Dr. Bridget. People think that they had to reinvent the wheel, to enter into the space. And, funny that you mentioned photography, Natasha, because photography was actually the bulk of my professional background and how I entered into the regulated cannabis industry, photographing cultivation centers and dispensaries. And that's how I got to learn more about the plants, about compliance, regulations. And so, that became my story that, transitioning into the cannabis industry. So speaking of stories, one of the big reasons that we're here is because of a very important book that just came out Volume 2 of Courage in Cannabis. Dr. Bridget, if you can talk a little bit more about that with us. First of all, congratulations on Volume 2. I definitely got to read some of Volume 1 and excited to read more of this one.
Absolutely. So we have not launched yet. We're still in the midst of doing some editing, and we're this close to getting it over to the publisher right now, but it is definitely a new and improved version from Volume 1. Volume 1 was 18 authors of varied backgrounds and experiences that share how cannabis and CBD has changed their life. And that means patients, doctors, lawyers, moms, all over the map, right? Entrepreneurs, business people. I knew that I wanted to capture stories that we did not explore as much in the first volume. And so there's more presence of the legacy stories are in there, which I think is really important. We bring in, as far as our featured authors, we bring in 3 different aspects. Uwe Bleshing is an incredible researcher and education person that writes the Cannabis Health Index. We have Adam Wilkes, who's our forward, who's the CEO of Tyson 2.0. And then we have Johnny Curry, who is a legendary legacy market entrepreneur who literally led the cannabis scene, maybe I should say, in the 1970s and 80s, and White Boy Rick put him in jail, if you are familiar with that story. And so our featured authors kind of hit 3 different aspects of this, along with having stories of everyday people, much more information about PTSD, because it's such a huge part of the cannabis patients that I encounter. Along with, we have something called Sparks. And so these are people that have voices in the cannabis space that wrote either quotes or shorter paragraph stories to kind of intermingle amongst the chapters. And so we have Ed Rosenthal, Mike Tyson, Jane West, and so many people, honestly, that I met along the way that influenced me, that will share some aspect of their experiences as well. So I'm very excited, very tired, but excited as well.
Congratulations. And this is, I think that what we're talking about here is going to be something we look back on 10, 20 years from now and recognize that these are the stories that really, launched this as a so-called industry, right?
Mhm.
Out of prohibition. So thank you so much for doing this. You have the book behind you. Can you, that was the volume 1, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken, is that the book?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you grab that and show us, or no? Is that easy to, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Just so
It's not
folks
that
can
far
see
away.
that. Yep. Okay, cool. I can't tell, I wasn't sure if it was virtual either. Courage and Cannabis. All right, awesome. And Natacha, you're in the book, right? You're in volume 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Can you tell us about the experience of providing your story and writing your story and putting it together for this book?
It's been a great experience. First of all, Dr. Bridget has the patience of Job. So she's been just so patient with working with us. I don't think that I don't know how many of us came to this project as authors in our prior lives. So just working through that experience and working with folks that are so supportive has been tremendous. But it's been an opportunity to share. And I think with the destigmatization that still is some ongoing work throughout the country, it's that sharing, it's that ability to see yourself in the story of others that gives you a connection. I tell people, even if you think you don't have a connection to the plant, you probably do. You're probably not more than 2 degrees separated from that plant. So why not take the opportunity to read those stories and see if you see yourself there? Because it's not a panacea, right? And it isn't going to be for everyone, but that's not the point. The point is whether it is for you or not, it's going to concern you. If it concerns a loved one, it's going to concern you. If it is part of your community or your town structure, it's going to concern you. So why not take the time to understand it? And I think the ability to see ourselves, even in pieces of someone else's story, is something that humanizes the experience. And it's something that makes you say, well, this may not be my thing, but I see how it can help others. And therefore, it makes voting differences in terms of how people vote and what they vote for. It makes differences in how people write up the policies in their places of employment, how they take into consideration what needs to happen from a school or a church perspective. And so I think the book itself is just a wonderful, wonderful documentation of other people's journeys and the journey, hopefully, that you'll see yourself in.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that, the thing that stands out to me there is that even if it's not you that's represented in that story, it's likely a family member that's going through something very similar that you might not have any idea about because they're still in the so-called cannabis closet. And so reading that story and finding the understanding so that when they do come out of that cannabis closet, there's more understanding for us, right? And there's more potential for advocacy for our fellow loved ones. So, that's I really think that this is a book everybody should have on their shelf. Is it available? It's available through Amazon, right? Is that how?
Right. So volume 1 right now is available on Amazon. And keep in mind that I moved the book from, just something I was creating into my nonprofit for this year. And so all the sales go back into the nonprofit. And the purpose of this is so that right now it was more of a pay to play and people coming in. What we want to do is have no barriers to be able to gather these stories, right? And so by all the sales going back into the nonprofit, and we have incredible sponsors for the second book as well, we'll be able to build a series of inspirational stories that will allow people to, like you said, whether they're seeing themselves or their nephew or making a legislative decision, they'll be able to go to this book. And we have, colleges that have taken this on as well. And we utilize the book even to educate people. So in the sense that I can do a lecture with all of the numbers and p-values and statistics that you can imagine. But the one thing you'll remember is the story that I told. Right. And so we utilize this as a way to help people to relate and then offer additional information as well.
Excellent. So we were talking earlier about the educational ecosystems for the May 3rd Catalyst conversation. I think that this is a book that if they're not already using it, they could absolutely be using in their curriculum within the different facilities they use. I know you actually teach with Cleveland School Cannabis, if I'm not mistaken. So you're already working with them in that capacity. And I want to say Kevin Green was actually in volume 1, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So all these different synergies we're seeing in the educational ecosystems it takes to really move this industry forward. So we're going to go ahead and take a break here. When we come back, we're going to jump in with our Canna Quiz. It's our game that we play here. It's a pretty simple, straightforward game. There's no studying needed ahead of time, of course, but we're going to test your cannabis knowledge, and we'll see how you do. So we'll be right back. Vince, our amazing producer, I shout him out every week because, he's behind the camera. He likes to be behind the camera. But I know that, without the guy behind the camera, we'd not be doing this. For 4 years now, he's been producing this show. It's been painstaking. It's been a lot of ups and downs and figuring everything out because nothing in cannabis is ever easy. So Vince, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and take it away, and we'll be right back.
Well, here at the National Cannabis Industry Association, we have proudly represented small businesses across the cannabis industry since 2010. We represent Main Street cannabis, not Wall Street cannabis. We have come so far in this fight to legalize cannabis that it seems that it's almost inevitable, and we're the ones making sure that as those rules are written, they favor small businesses, mom and pop operators, and Main Street cannabis, not Wall Street cannabis. In addition to making sure that your voice is heard at the federal level, being a member of NCIA also means building a vibrant community of small business owners within the cannabis space. Because we can always learn so much better by working together, learning from our mistakes and our successes, and building this industry together. So if you're interested in making sure that small businesses and Main Street cannabis has a seat at the table, be sure to join NCIA at thecannabisindustry.org.
Awesome. So everybody, welcome back. It's been a great conversation. Just really, spanning from Kay dropping some of those news bits, especially the Boston Museum, that is really now intriguing me. I want to go check that out for sure. And then just great conversation here about the professionalism and what it takes to be in this industry and why and how folks, doctors and lawyers have entered this industry the importance of these doctors and lawyers being from Black and brown communities that are representing the communities that have been harmed by the war on drugs, that have been left out in a lot of ways as the industry grows to being $100 billion of impact. So that all said, we're now going to play our Canna Quiz game. And so the way this works is it's very simple, straightforward. It's a multiple choice question. We have 2 of them. The goal here, is, of course, is always to get 2 out of 2. But if you get 1 out of 2, like that's a passing score here as far as we're concerned. So we'll go ahead and ask this. I think there's only been like 1, maybe 2 people the whole time. We got to go back and look at this, Vince, and how many people have actually gotten 2 out of 2. I know a bunch of people have gotten 0 out of 2, and I think there's some folks that have gotten 1 out of 2. So anyway, we're going to start here now. The first question. The political acceptance of cannabis is undeniable. With less than 10% of the country still supporting the full criminalization and prohibition of cannabis, it is becoming more and more popular to be 420 friendly on the campaign trail. In contrast to what Bill Clinton, and you know, everybody I don't know, here remembers this, but Bill Clinton, of course, you know, yes, I inhaled. Wait, hold on. I got this. I'm reading the question myself here for the first time, so sorry about this. So Bill Clinton, for everybody that doesn't remember, I did not inhale. That was his main thing, right? We've heard that probably a million times. It's on a million comedy sketches. I did not inhale. I don't know what that was about, but I guess it was because he knew that if he said he inhaled, that maybe he'd lose, you know, a couple million votes or something like that, right? And you know, we would have had a very different trajectory in history. So that said, what U.S. senator, while running for president, candidly said, "Yes, I inhale frequently. That was the point." So we have here Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, or John Kerry. Which of these U.S. senators, while running for president, said, "Yes, I inhaled frequently. That was the point"? Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and John Kerry.
I kind of want to say that it might have been Obama.
Okay. And we have Natasha. Is that your answer as well? And you're on mute.
I will go with Obama for 500.
Okay, all right. Awesome. So we have both of you going with Obama, and you're both right. Obama actually told the truth and acknowledged what all of us kind of knew, which was that, yes, Clinton probably inhaled as well, because exactly what was the point? You're just going to stand there and not inhale it, and that makes all the difference. So anyway, Barack Obama, so you're 1 for 1 so far. Kate, why don't you go ahead and take us for question number 2?
All right, question number 2. With a doctor and an attorney getting to work together today to answer the questions, let's go international and off the beaten path with this next one. Which former Soviet republic was the first Russian neighbor to legalize the consumption of marijuana? Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Georgia, or Ukraine? So which former Soviet republic was the first Russian neighbor to legalize the consumption of cannabis? Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Georgia, or Ukraine?
I'm leaning on you, Natasha, on this.
Yes. Well, you know, we got 1 and we're very happy with the 1.
Very happy.
I'm gonna say, is it Kazakhstan?
Okay, so you're going with Kazakhstan, and Dr. Bridget?
I'll go with whatever Natasha says.
I am so sorry in advance.
Okay, what is it?
This is actually something I learned just recently. It's Georgia. It's a country. It's a small country. It's a small country.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Georgia's actually one of the most kind of like open economy, free economy type countries in the world. It's one of the easiest places to go and set up bank accounts and set up businesses, and it's really very friendly. I know that they've been going through some stuff lately with the war in Ukraine and everything, but for the last several years, Georgia has been really at the forefront of really trying to provide economic freedom for people to be able to do what they need to do and make money in business and stuff like that, as opposed to some countries that make it extremely challenging to be a small business owner. So yeah, they've also, it looks like, you know, gone ahead and legalized cannabis consumption. So that's awesome. So 1 out of 2, not bad. Not bad at all. So the last thing I want to ask here, because we do have a little bit of time left, is I noted in the show notes here that let's see, I think it's Natasha, you speak 4 languages. So I'm just curious to know, what are those 4 languages? Because that's not a common thing, especially in America, for people to speak, you know, even 2, but let alone 4 languages. So tell us the 4 languages you speak.
English. But my family's from Haiti. I speak French, I speak Creole, and I also speak Spanish. And I've had to work in all 4 languages as an immigration attorney, so I get a lot of practice.
Awesome. Do you ever kind of switch back and forth between, especially French, Creole, and
Always.
Spanish are going to have, okay, yeah.
Always, sometimes it's because I can't think of a word in one language, and so the mind adjusts to another. I learned most of them as a child, so there's some native fluency there, but it's also culturally appropriate to jump from language to language because it just works more fluidly that way.
Excellent. Dr. Bridget, you speak any other languages?
I'm barely getting this English thing together. My Spanish used to be excellent and now it is not, I would say. But the one thing, and I've never shared this with you, Natasha, but for years I did immigration physicals. And so I was always in and out of that space as well. But no, my English, I'm still working on the English piece.
Yeah, right. I think we all are.
We were destined
Well,
to work together one way or another then.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And Kay, I know you speak multiple languages, right?
I wouldn't say multiple. I speak Tagalog, which is the main, dialect in the Philippines. And so that helps me understand Spanish because a lot of the words and the language is very, very similar.
So, I mean, I would consider Tagalog and English to be multiple. I think that's two languages. That's multiple. I don't speak multiple. I can get by with understanding a little bit of Spanish, and I've dabbled and studied like 6 or 7 other languages that I do not speak at all. So I don't speak multiple languages. So when you say you don't really speak multiple, but you do speak another one, I'm like, all right, well, what does that leave me then?
I was in advanced French in high school, okay. So Natasha, maybe we can converse a little bit.
Awesome. Well, hey, so no, I like to be able to just learn the personal stuff. Last week we got to learn some great stories from Mary Jane Altman was on, and she told us a great story about actually it was a high school story as well there. So, but the languages thing I think is something that just throws out there. Look, networking season is upon us, right? We get so stuck in what's up with business and what's up with work and what's up with advocacy and so on and so forth. So just a little reminder before we close out today that we're also all human beings and people too. And, it's kind of fun to remember that, especially when we're out there on the networking trail. So that all said, really appreciate you both joining us here today. Kay, thank you so much for being such a great co-host with me today and taking the pressure off of, the news stories and everything. You provided amazing news stories here today that I think are really important for people to know about. Looking forward to volume 2 of the book coming out. Definitely let us know when the book comes out. We'll throw the link out there for folks. In the meantime, get out there and get volume 1. Start reading volume 1 and learning about the stories that are out there, because Encouraging Cannabis is something that, I love the name because Encouraging Cannabis is like this active kind of a name. It's important. It's necessary. It's something that a lot of people struggle with, to be quite frank. And it's something that, we all could use a little bit more of. So that all said, I hope to see you out in Detroit, Natasha. Dr. Bridget, where are you, Natasha? I actually don't even know where you are located.
Oh, I'm in the battlegrounds. I'm in North Carolina. We have no pathway to anything yet, so it's very exciting here. Absolutely.
We're hoping to get to Atlanta in the fall. Maybe not until next year, but hopefully we'll bring the equity workshop out there. So maybe we'll make a quick trip up to North Carolina as well. We know that we want to start going to more states with the equity workshop tour that haven't necessarily come fully online, so that we can tap in with folks that are trying to figure it out still, so that they're ready to roll when things do come online. So, I know you got a lot of work cut out for you in North Carolina there. Anything we can ever do to help from the NCAA standpoint of things, just let us know. We know that it's a real challenge across the country making this happen. So that all said, everybody have a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of your week whenever you're listening to this. Thank you for checking out the Cannabis Minority Report. I'm sure there was something else I was supposed to bring up, but I totally forgot it right now. Anyway, Vince will remind me later. Everybody have a great one, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Cannabis Minority Report is a production of the National Cannabis Industry Association. We are hosted each week by Mike Lomuto, and we were joined this week as co-host by Kay Villamin. Directed by Vince Chandler. Our producers are Bethany Moore and Aaron Smith, and our executive producers are Vince Chandler and Mike Lomuto.